Hello, everyone. My name is Anastasia Stoyanova, and you're listening to this podcast, or maybe you're watching the video version of English Canada. And of course, we are talking about Canada and the English language and just overall my life in Toronto, immigration, things like that. And in today's episode, we are going to do just that because today's episode is dedicated to a very important topic. And I think if you are already in Canada, maybe you have a temporary status and you want to change to a permanent one, or maybe you're just planning on coming to Canada. So today I'll talk about what does a person need to immigrate to Canada, and I'll share my own experience. So I will talk about a little bit about basic immigration requirements, and I will just give the overview to you, and I'll talk about my story. I'll talk about financial requirements. And then when it comes to housing and jobs, like a job search, I decided to create a separate episode like the next one, just focusing on those two things. So housing and finding a job. So kind of apartment hunting and finding a job. So I will dedicate the whole episode about that. So the next one will be just about that. So in today's episode, we'll talk about the basic requirements, a little bit about my story, immigration requirements like age, money, education, work experience. Also, I want to point out some hidden immigration challenges that every immigrant faces at some point, one way or another. So I'll give you some tips at the very end. And I'll share with you, just give my personal assessment and personal insights, honest ones, so without sugarcoating it. So essentially, the first question you might be asking, why I decided to move to Canada, to immigrate to Canada. And when we talk about the concept of immigration, again, I want to point out that when we say move to Canada, some people move to Canada temporarily, right? So maybe you want to just get some experience working or living here, being a student. I know some of my acquaintances and friends who come, let's say, from France, and they just came here to get some experience and work, let's say at one of the famous French schools, like a global chain that's quite famous. So they're not planning on immigrating, so to speak, when it comes to their documents. They're not planning on becoming permanent residents, or they're not planning on becoming citizens. So, however, I do think that most people, when they come here, they always kind of feel that Canada is okay, Canada is good, oh, maybe Canada is great. So they go through this, culture shock and then adaptation, and then they decide, hey, I want to become a permanent resident. So for most people, because they immigrate, let's say through, depends on your pathway, right? But a lot of people immigrate either through economic immigration or through studying, right? Which is also kind of, you could argue that it's an economic immigration. Some people immigrate through spouses or common laws. That's also a common pathway. And again, I'm not an immigration consultant, okay? I'm an English teacher who has been living in Toronto for 4 years up to this point, 2025. So I just want to share my perspective and my story, right? So I'm not giving you any legal advice here, or I'm not giving you like immigration advice. Just want to share, and maybe you can learn something from that, and maybe you can take it up to the next level, and maybe you might schedule or book an appointment with a lawyer, immigration lawyer or immigration consultant. Make sure that they are licensed, though. You can always check on the official Canadian website. You can just type, check the immigration consultant license, right? And every consultant should practice consulting and giving such pieces of advice only when they have that license, only when they went through this college, studying and obtaining that license. So, but that's another thing. What I want to tell you, first of all, Basic immigration requirements will depend on how you are going to immigrate. In my case, we immigrated through an economic pathway. So what does it mean? We immigrated through an express entry. That's, if you don't know, that's a point system. It's like a database of all the applicants, of all the people who are interested in Canada. So we create the profile and we put our names there, all the, important information about our credentials, our education, our work experience, our age. These are all factors that impact your score, because based on your score, you either get selected out of the system or you don't get selected. So that's very important to consider. Age is crucial because once you turn 30, you lose points for your age. And that's, I think it's essential to understand that because, of course, when it comes to economic immigration, Canada only wants the young people who can contribute to, to the economy, to pay tax, who can still be valuable asset to the system, right? So that's why once you turn 30, you are no longer considered young per se, right? At least not for this Canadian immigration system, right? So Canada says that, okay, once you turn 30, you are gonna be punished. Yeah, so of course I'm joking here, but it's not funny for most people, right? Because I'm already 30, so of course I'm just saying that it's not funny. When you turn 30, you start losing the points in the system. So yeah, I'm older than that, of course. Just sharing with you that be careful and plan accordingly. If you still have like several years before you turn 30, so please consider immigrating as fast as possible. Remember that you could, if you have a family, you cannot immigrate alone, right? If you have a marriage certificate, you cannot just say that you don't have a husband or something, right? It has to be, you have to provide all of the information thoroughly and fully and in an honest way, right? So no lying on your applications. I never advise to do that. Always be honest about all kinds of things, all kinds of background, because they will do a background check anyway. And then if they find out something that you covered up, it's not going to be good because, well, first of all, you're going to be deported if you're already here, most likely, and then banned from coming not only to Canada, but to the other countries who are in alliance with Canada. So be careful with that. And just sharing my experience. So, of course, we were registered in the express entry system. We were accumulating the points for age, education, because both my husband and I we both have higher education, and we were going through this evaluation process by World Education Services. There is such an organization. You pay the money, and then they check your credentials. They have certain standards. They check if your education adheres to these standards. So they, for example, if let's say you graduated from the university somewhere in Ukraine, so you gotta ask your university to send all of the information about yourself, your education to this organization. So you cannot just send the information yourself. You gotta contact the institution that you attended and that you graduated from, and then they send the document. So it takes time and money. It might take up to half a year, depending how fast your institution responds, and they take some time to process. I think it's at least 1 month, but of course it could take longer, and it costs money, like about 300 Canadian dollars, I think, something like that. Overall, you're also required to do the medical exam, and of course, if you're not healthy, Canada is not going to want you. So, well, in most cases, right, if you have some kind of chronic illness or something, because it will put a lot of pressure on the healthcare system, and the healthcare system of Canada is already under a lot of pressure because we lack the specialists, we lack the doctors. So, also, for the economic immigration, as I said, the importance of education, higher education, and also of your work experience. So you have to provide the documents from your former employers, from your current employer, regarding the information, who you are in terms of your profession, your skills, and your position, because every job has a special code in the system. It's called National Occupational Classification, NOC. So based on this code, you're going to be classified, right? Like how skilled you are, basically. And then they make this draw sometimes based on your work experience and your job. So let's say right now Canada focuses a lot on health occupations or trade occupations. In the past, Canada focused a lot on so-called STEM, which is science, math, engineering, those kinds of things, mathematics, and IT, but no longer. I think they took on so many people in this field that they no longer, at least as of now, they no longer focus on that kind of field, on that kind of jobs. Because I keep following, though we immigrated some time ago, we got the permanent residence and we are on our way to citizenship. If everything, if the stars align, it's just a matter of time, right? And just if you are a good resident, you pay your tax, you do all the things right. Eventually, you study the history of Canada, you pass the test, you learn the language. For some people, it's it's such an obstacle because I have personally known some of my students and people who have been living here like for 10 years, and then the only thing that stops them from becoming a citizen is actually language skills. I think to become a Canadian citizen, you need, as of now, again, maybe things always change, so double check that. As of now, September 22nd, or what day is it today? Oh, I'm lost. It's October already, right? Like, as of now, so the fall 2025, let's put it like that, you need to have CLB4, Canadian Language Benchmark 4, in your language proficiency to become a citizen. It means, basically, if we translate it into simple terms, either English or French, pre-intermediate level. So almost intermediate, almost like a not advanced, nothing super complex, but basically you can hold conversations, you can understand simple text, things like that. And also for citizenship, as far as I remember, because again, I've had experience preparing people, and it's going to be my own experience as well very shortly, taking this listening and speaking test. That's all. They don't even require you to write or read. So, but anyway, if you take the listening part, they will see that you can read, obviously, because you should read the questions. So anyway, I'm getting off track here because that's about citizenship, right? So for most people, not yet. For most people, it's just a dream. So we'll talk about immigration and becoming permanent resident. Because lately, I can tell that it's becoming almost impossible, right? Especially in provinces like Ontario, like Toronto. For us, if you have listened to my previous episodes, you probably remember that for us, it was quite hard as well. Although we were young, we were both, my husband and I mean, right? We were both quite educated. We have, like, I hold master's degree as of now. Yeah, who knows? Maybe in the future I'll hold PhD or something. Well, I'm still thinking about that, right? Because it's either business or PhD or some family life, so we always make those choices. I hold master's degree. My husband holds bachelor's degree. And we both are considered skilled workers. So there was that helped a lot. All in all, we were preparing our documents by themselves. We only booked one consultation with an immigration consultant. They helped us to build a strategy, though in the end that strategy never worked. So, because they were suggesting one thing, they suggested that I should learn French up to upper intermediate level, and then this would be 100% immigration. That yes, I could say that yes, guys, if you struggle and you cannot immigrate as of now, because again, things change every day, Canada wants people outside of Quebec to be able to speak good French, upper intermediate, and then they can invite you through the express entry system in the special draw for French speaking people. So that's interesting. And I think that another thing I want to talk about, as I mentioned before, is financial requirements. Because Canada sets a certain amount of money that you need to have in your savings account. So not your credits, not a credit from the bank, but in your savings account, in order to prove that you can survive here, that you could live here, that you can adapt well. And it's like about, for two people, I think they were about 17,000 Canadian dollars, something like that. You could always check that, Canada.ca. That's the best resource to go to, because that's where you can find all the information regarding immigration and what's going on in Canada in general. Canada has an amazing website, actually, guys. I'm looking at the other countries' websites. It's like Canada has a perfect, great, amazing website. And what's more, every province in Canada has their own website. For example, Ontario has their own website, its own website. So that's amazing. And you can find information. The only thing is that you need to have good English to be able to process that information and make certain decisions and choices. And also just take time and patience. Like in my case, I was looking at all the information online, and I was building my strategy to immigrate with my husband based on Canada.ca website, Ontario.ca. So I was making those decisions ultimately based on that. Because, yeah, you can always listen to the lawyer, to the immigration lawyer, but at the end of the day, it's you who has to make a choice which way to go. So remember that there are some hidden costs that official requirements don't account for. There could be, some adaptation time when you just come here and you need some time to integrate, to find your first job. It might take up to half a year, so you gotta make sure you really have the money that you claim to have. Also, the real cost will depend on the place where you're staying. So like in Toronto, you can feel safe. Like I can safely say that you should multiply those 17 or 18,000 Canadian dollars, like multiply 2 times or 3 times, just to be able to survive, to come here. And I'll talk about that a bit more in the next podcast, in the next episode, when I tell you guys about housing nightmare and job search nightmare here in Toronto, and the importance of this Canadian experience, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so one more important point I want to mention is that prepare your documents well beforehand, right? Because you don't want to come here and find out that, as a temporary worker, let's say, or as a student, you don't want to come here without your documents being translated into the English language. And do that in your native country, in the country where you are coming from, because that's going to be much cheaper. In Canada, all kinds of legal services like legal translation is very expensive. So I would recommend doing that beforehand, and just plan on how much money you really need. There is good website. And again, it's not an ad or anything. It's just me recommending you guys numbeo.com to kind of show the prices for groceries or food and housing in certain areas of the world, right? So you could look up Canada on numbeo.com, and you could look up the city where you want to stay in. So, and also learning language before coming here. Learn as much as possible of English and or French. Ideally, you should learn both. I cannot thank enough my immigration consultant, who actually said that, you got to learn French. And that's what I did. I had 0 French when I started, but one of the immigration strategies, if things had never worked, that would have been French, because I started learning when I was here. I was never planning on learning French in the first place, but it just happened so. I started learning for documents, and then we got the documents, the PR, through a different pathway, through a provincial nomination, thanks to my husband. Forever grateful. However, the French part, I never stopped learning French, and right now I'm mastered French. I have upper intermediate level. That's where I'm at right now, and I don't want to stop. So, but as I've told you guys before in the previous episodes, I do have experience of learning languages, because French is my sixth language that I tried to learn. Yeah, and not all of them are like C2 level, but most of them are working proficiency level, so I can manage. So like Russian, Ukrainian, English, German, a little bit of Chinese, just bits. So I would say Chinese is my weakest one, because I stopped learning that. I never practice anymore. Some time ago, I wanted to go and work in China, so that's why I learned. As an English teacher, yeah, I wanted to go and work there. But yeah, of course, English, the English language, the French language are the ones that I use every day here in Toronto for my work, for my personal life. So yeah, I suggest that you should learn English and French as much as you can before you come here. And also, you gotta work on the long-term strategy of adaptation. Like, I'll talk about that a bit more. Think about where you're gonna find the housing for the first several months, because for permanent housing, that's gonna be not too easy to obtain, like a condo or an apartment. So you gotta think about the temporary one. And also just think about, maybe you will need some Canadian certifications. Like in my case, I was getting TESOL Ontario. So you gotta invest some money and time and plan on doing that beforehand. And also, networking is crucial in Canada. It's not even about finding an apartment or finding a job. It's also making friends, and it's good to know people. So make sure you create that LinkedIn profile. Make sure you're active on social media. Make sure you have Facebook. Look at the local communities. So that can be quite useful. And of course, my honest assessment and some of the myths versus reality kind of thing I want to point out, and maybe just to summarize a little bit of intro and my personal story, is that in Canada, it's not easy to find your first job. Maybe like even survival job, especially in Toronto, because again, guys, I've been living in Toronto for 4 years. I've never lived in other parts of Canada, but I'm sure I would have survived, because if I survive in Toronto, I'll be fine. But in Toronto, you gotta be ready to work 2 or 3 jobs when you just arrive. That's just the truth. Well, depending on, of course, on your requirements and what you want from life. But in most cases, it's never gonna be enough, right? And you just have to accept that maybe just because you're going to live in Toronto, some of the things might change. Like you will downgrade your lifestyle, you will downgrade everything you have, basically, because you start from scratch, you start from square one, as they say. And don't hesitate to get social support and psychological support as well. There are some services available to newcomers. There are lots of services, but the thing is that you have to sign up for them on your own. So you should take initiative into your own hands and do that. Also remember that language does not guarantee your success. Coming to Canada, they expect you to learn, to already have learned the language. It's like a bare minimum, right? So make sure you do that. And the harsh truth is that the real adaptation time might take up to 3 years or more, because you're going to need that Canadian experience and everything. And also, in my case, I romanticized and idealized Canada so much that I thought that there's no discrimination here. There is no problem. There are no problems when it comes to finding a job or finding a good condo or an apartment, something like that. There are lots of problems. And there's this concept of rose-colored glasses that people might wear, meaning that they think that things are perfect. But you should be ready to become really resilient and face this kind of adversity when it comes to immigrating, because immigration is not about gain, guys. Immigration is mostly about loss. Right. So Thank you so much for listening to this part. In the next part, in the next episode, I'll be talking about jobs and how to find your first job, and I'll share my experience, and then I will share about your first apartment hunting. So I hope you're gonna benefit from that. So please stay with me. I hope you enjoy listening to my life stories and my tips. Remember, once again, just a disclaimer that I'm not an immigration consultant, so please don't hesitate to reach out to professionals because everything is so individualistic, right? Like, you gotta consider who you are, what you have, what kind of past experience and credentials, because your job, your education, your age is going to determine where you are at when it comes to scores or immigration and becoming a permanent resident. But in the meantime, I wish you all well. I hope that you guys get what you want in your life and become permanent residents and then Canadian citizens, and that you could celebrate this amazing country, and that you can accept that every country is not perfect and there will be some problems, of course. And just, we gotta stay realistic and come together and be strong and support each other. Thank you so much, and see you in the next episode.